We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood.
What's up, everybody? My name is Kinetic, and welcome to my first guide here in Bloodborne. I've spent a couple of hours, and with all of my past experience in Souls games, I thought it would be fitting that I share with you the things that I've learned from previous Souls games, and also the things that I've learned from my initial experiences here in Bloodborne. I think some of these things will certainly be more than familiar to you if you've played From Software games before. For those of you that are just getting into Bloodborne for the very first time, I think some of this definitely will benefit you. Let's get into, first of all, our items and equipment. If we press the options button on our controller, we can access our inventory and a bunch of other things. Let's take a look at the inventory really quick. Now, from here we can see we have a bunch of different tabs up here at the top that are basically categorizing all of the items and equipment that we have. For example, we have consumables over here, things like Molotov cocktails, we have oil urns, pebbles, all sorts of different little consumables that we pick up in the world. One of the coolest and one of the most recommended things, I think, that the Souls community will back me up here, is you can press the square button and you can get a display window that pops up and gives you additional information about items. This can range from simply a longer version of explaining what the item is, but also possibly give you, for example, lore insight, maybe an idea of characters in history that have held this item before you and stuff like that. So definitely check this window out. It can be really useful, or at the very least entertaining. Over here we have our weapons. Same thing, we can press the square button and it will give us different windows of information. We have right hand weapons and we have left hand weapons. We also have attire. Attire is basically our armor here in Bloodborne, and a variety of other things. So we've got all these cool items in our inventory, but how do we actually use them? How do we equip them, for example? Down below here, we have a row for arms, which is basically our weapons, our row for attire, and slots for quick items. Quick items are sort of ready-to-use items that you can activate at the click of a single button. So for the arms section here, these two slots are for your right hand weapon, and these two slots here are for your left hand weapon. You can see that on my character right there. He's holding a gun in his left hand, which is right there, and of course the axe in his right hand. By clicking left or right on the D-pad, you will change from one weapon to another. So I had a torch also in the second slot. That's how I can change to the torch and back to my pistol. Same thing if I had a second weapon equipped in the second slot for my right hand, but currently there's nothing there. Attire is important to wear, obviously. You don't want to just be running around naked. You will be very squishy. Keep an eye on your inventory as well for new pieces of attire, or new armor, in other words, that you can put in these slots. The quick slots are where you can put, for example, consumables. It's a good idea to put consumables in these slots. For example, the Molotov cocktails. This is a very powerful consumable item that can set a single or even multiple enemies on fire. To access your quick slot items, you will press down on the D-pad and you will be able to flip and change the different items that you set in your quick item slots. Let's take a look at the UI really quick here. We have our red and a green bar up at the top left, which of course represents our health, and the green bar represents our endurance, or think of it as energy. Down just below that we have a red bottle, which is our blood vials. Think of them as health potions. Just below that we have a whitish silver looking icon. Those are your bullets for your gun. And of course the quick slot items that I was just talking about. On the top right hand side we have blood echoes. Blood echoes are basically souls from, for example, Dark Souls, a currency of sorts that you can use to spend for a variety of different things, including leveling up your character. And just below that, another resource called Insight. I'll talk about that later. Before we get into more about our weapons, I also want to talk about stats. Stats are really important to understand in From Software games, I think, especially compared to more modern RPG games where it feels like the stats are just trivial numbers that really you don't have to care about at all. But in From Software games like Bloodborne, it's really, really powerful knowledge to have, understanding what all of these different things mean. You don't need to necessarily have it all memorized right from the very beginning, but eventually you're going to want to know what this stuff means. We can find out more information by pressing in the R3 button, and it brings up a little help window to give you a little bit more of a description of what these things mean. For example, Blood Tinge is an attribute governing power of weapons that use quicksilver bullets. Determines whether or not you can use certain equipment. These values, for example, Blood Tinge 7, Strength 14, Skill 13, these all determine whether or not you can use certain equipment. So in other words, let's say I find a really big fucking sword and it has a strength number of 20. That's a requirement, and I would need 20 strength in order to use that weapon effectively. So take some time to flip along all of these different things. Again, like I said, you don't have to have them all memorized, but it can certainly help you out in understanding what is what. Also, up here in the top right, we have 4 slots there where you can place runes. You will pick up runes as you explore, as you perform different accomplishments here in Bloodborne. Think of them as the rings from previous Souls games. With these runes, they enhance your abilities or your attributes for things. For example, maybe it gives you a resistance to fire, or it gives you more strength or more endurance or something like that. So back here in the Hunter's Dream, I definitely like to point out that this is a place that you want to explore. I mean, you really want to explore everywhere in Bloodborne, I think, for sure. But if you explore, you'll find these gray puddles. These gray puddles are messengers. They're ugly, but they're friendly. And if you click on them, they'll give you a little bit of information. This is a tutorial of sorts area, but also is kind of like a home base. And you'll find a bunch of these messengers willing to help you out and give you more information beyond what you will find here in this video. Alright, so let's talk about actually using the weapons that we have equipped. Our R1 and R2 buttons are a basic attack, and R2 is a more powerful attack. You can even hold and charge this for a really powerful attack. Now, talking more about endurance, if you take a look again at the top left, you'll see that that green bar, every time that I'm performing an attack, is going down, but then eventually refills. I wish health would do that, but it doesn't. We'll talk more about regaining health here in a minute. Also, our gun, if we press in the L2 button, we can shoot bullets. Now let's say you like shooting your gun a lot. Well, eventually you're going to run out of bullets. So what's a guy to do with a gun and no bullets? Well, unfortunately we can't pistol whip people in Bloodborne. There are a couple of ways that we can regain our bullets though. We can pick them up off of the corpses of our enemies, or if you're willing to make a sacrifice, you can press up on the D-pad, and you will actually sacrifice your health to regain some temporary bullets for your gun. It's now indicated by that red value, and we can shoot once again. This is a pretty cool way of getting some bullets back if you really need some. There's only so far that you'll be able to sacrifice your health though, before it's just like, nope, can't do that. But let's go ahead and press the triangle button, use one of our blood vials, aka health potions basically, right? And now we've regained some of that health. This is an interesting system, you could think of it this way, of exchanging your blood vials for bullets if you really, really need to. For our items from our quick slot sections here, for example, we can press square. There goes my pebble. What are you going to have an effect from throwing pebbles around like that? Well, you can use them, for example, to taunt enemies to come at you. Maybe you're facing a group of enemies and you don't necessarily want them all coming. Maybe you just want to grab one guy's attention, you could do that with some pebbles, and it's quite thrilling. So we've got the basic attacks down, but we can take it a step higher. Press in the L1 button to transform your right-hand weapon. This weapon in particular, the axe, can be transformed from a single-hand version to a two-hand version. And of course you can see, using the same R1 and R2 attacks, I'm getting very different results though. A much more powerful version of my axe. And we can take it up a step higher even than that. If you, for example, press R1 a couple of times and then L1, you can perform a transformation attack, which is really fun and also adds a lot of complexity and depth to the combat system here in Bloodborne. I really, really like it. So take your time while you're here in the Hunter's Dream. There's nothing to be ashamed of practicing swinging your weapon around here before you go out into the real danger zones. If anything, you're just preparing yourself for what is sure to be a brutal but exciting time. One more thing that we want to give a go is pressing the circle button. By doing this, you'll perform a dodge roll or a quick roll, whatever you want to call it. I say maybe it's more appropriate to call it a quick roll because you may not be just using it for dodging. Now, standing around in the Hunter's Dream is all good and fine, but we'll never get glory and girls by doing that. So instead, I say we head to the headstone here and we'll go to Central Yharnam and I'll talk about engaging enemies. Welcome to Central Yharnam. This is one of the earliest areas that we get to explore here in Bloodborne. Don't worry, there's not going to be any spoilers or anything like that. We're just talking about gameplay features. This is one of the most important things that you can find here in Bloodborne. This lantern. Here in Bloodborne, this is a teleportation point. I could travel like I did just now from Hunter's Dream here to Central Yharnam because of this lantern's location. This is also where you will respawn when you die. Also, these lanterns here on the walls are a point of interest as well. Keep an eye open for these because it allows you to have conversations with NPCs.
Across the valley to the east of Yharnam, you'll find the cathedral ward. Deep within lies the old main cathedral, said to be the source of blood. I haven't heard of pale blood, but that's your best bet if it's anything to do with unique types of blood.
Aside from really interesting conversations and a little bit more story and all that good stuff, you will probably also have some other beneficial interactions with these NPCs, so keep an eye open for both the lanterns on the ground and the lanterns on the walls. Alright, now let's talk about engaging enemies. Hopefully you took my advice and you spent a little bit of time doing your basic and even more advanced combo attacks using your weapons and transformation, and maybe did a bit of dodge rolling, or quick rolling I should say. Let's call it quick rolling, because it can be used for more than just dodging, right? Let's talk about the R3 button again. This is how you will be able to lock on to your enemies. And by doing so, no matter where I go with my character, I will be constantly facing towards them. This has its pros and cons, so be careful and get used to, if anything, my recommendation, get used to switching on and off from the lock-on. Our quick roll, while locked on to an enemy, becomes a quick dash. Instead of rolling, I will dash around from left to right and back and even forward. Forward can actually make this into an offensive technique. Dash forward, and then perform a couple of attacks will allow you to quickly close the gap and surprise your enemies. Let's talk about recovering health. If you take damage, but then perform a successful attack on an enemy, you will actually be able to regain your lost health. This is a fantastic system, I think, that rewards skillful play here in Bloodborne. So far we've seen a bunch of slashing attacks with our axe, but what about the gun? Well, you can shoot people, simply if you like, but there's more valuable use out of using our bullets than simply shooting enemies. We can also use our bullets to stagger our enemies and then perform visceral attacks. Think of a visceral attack as like a critical hit. And that is how that's done. I staggered him just as he was hitting me, or just as he was about to hit me, and then he went into a kind of vulnerable position after being staggered. Once that's done, then you move closer to your enemy and hit the R1 button to perform a visceral attack. This is more than likely going to kill your average baddie in one shot. Well, two if we're also counting the bullet, right? Some other effective ways to attack enemies is by running at them. Our circle button can be used, if held, to run at enemies or just run around in general. And as you're running, press your attack button to perform a running attack. This can often lead to a lot of damage dealt if performed correctly. Also, we have lunging attacks by quickly pressing together forward on the left analog stick and the R2 button will perform a lunge attack. Also, very effective and very hard hitting. Now, while you're exploring around here in Bloodborne, you're going to see a couple of different types of messengers on the ground. You'll see the gray ones, which may be generated from the game itself, or messages left by players to help guide you around, give you warnings, a heads up about maybe a hidden item and stuff like that. For example, this, it says, beware of strong foe. Or these messages can also be sometimes used in the wrong hands to troll people, so take what these messages say with a grain of salt. Along with the gray messengers, we also have these, let's call them red messengers, and by clicking on them, we can get a view into a person's death. It may be a way of showing us what we're up against, sort of. Either way, I would say it's a pretty good warning most of the time, unless they're doing something stupid like falling off of a cliff or something like that. And finally, for the end of this video, if you're wondering how the blood echoes work for currency and leveling your characters, well, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but let's just say you will acquire some insight, and then from acquiring that insight, then you'll be able to see a change. And from that change, you can use your blood echoes to level up your character. I'll talk about more in regards to blood echoes, leveling up your character, and ideas on builds as well in future videos. For now, I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Click the like button to support these Bloodborne videos here on my channel, and stay subscribed. More is on the way soon. Thanks again for watching. My name is Kinetic, and I'll see you next time.